Here's how many games Tua Tagovailoa has missed throughout his career. And, of course, we focus on 2022 when he had 2 concussions. He left the Thursday nighter against the Bills with a 3rd concussion. He did play all 17 games last season for Miami. He left the game with a shoulder injury. But obviously a lot of concerns about Tua as we are joined by our NFL reporter Dave Naylor live from Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. And, you know, even before Tua left this game, the Bills' defense just absolutely dominant. And this is a defense that a lot of people were concerned about, having lost Micah Hyde and lost Jordan Poyer in the offseason. How are they able to shut down this Miami offense even before Tua left the game?
Well, it was pretty clear with the Bills' strategy in this. They were going to play their two safeties deep all night, and they were going to fly to the football when the ball was handed off or when they ran their screen passes or quick passes, and they were very effective doing that. And every time Miami tried to go deep to anybody other than Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill, it was a turnover. I mean, the Bills tonight, 24 points overall on turnovers. And I think you have to speak to the depth of this defense. You mentioned the 2 safeties, Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp. You know, those were guys that were backups a year ago, and this was a real stress test for them tonight to face this Miami offense with all this speed. But if I told you during training camp, Jay, that the second level of the defense for the Bills was going to be Cam Lewis, Balen Spector, and Dorian Williams, I mean, those were guys that were, Dorian Williams was a guy who was expected to start a lot this year. Cam Lewis and Balen Spector were not. And I think when you had those 2 linebackers and that slot corner going against that Miami defense after Terrell Bernard went out early in the game, you figure that Miami was really going to take advantage of that. They really didn't get the chance. And again, speaking to depth, Jamarcus Ingram, who made the pick 6 in the 3rd quarter that kind of iced the game, he's a guy who spent 2 years on the practice roster. I believe he'd only played on the roster 5 games before this season. So when you look at who the Bills were starting and relying upon in their secondary, it speaks to their coaching, it speaks to their depth. And of course, you know, when they were critical plays on 4th down, the Bills got 2 sacks, one from Ed Oliver, one from Von Miller. So, you know, whether it was at the line of scrimmage or deep in down the field, Buffalo's defense did their job everywhere in this game.
And then when it comes to the offensive side of the football, Dave, Josh Allen did not have to be all-world in this one, especially with the emergence of James Cook and his 3 touchdowns. What can you say about Cook's performance?
Well, I'll tell you something about James Cook. One of the things that he has developed a reputation for in the first 2 years at the Bills is making critical mistakes near the goal line at critical junctures of the play. Fumbles, dropping passes that should be touchdowns. So when you see on the stat line in the first half of the game that James Cook has 3 touchdowns, you know, that's a big step just in the fact that he's making those plays at the goal line that sometimes he seemed to have the yips. The other thing about him, he had 78 yards rushing tonight. James Cook is not a guy who's a yards after contact guy. He's a guy who really excels when the offensive line is making holes, and he can use his speed to get through those holes and take it upfield. So when you see the kind of numbers he was producing, averaging almost 8 yards a carry, that tells you again that the Bills were winning at the line of scrimmage, because Cook is not a guy who's going to have a great night if the offensive line isn't doing his job. But when it is, he can really burst, and we saw that tonight, particularly on the 49-yard run for a touchdown.
So, Bills look great. Bills 2-0. Bills in the driver's seat the East, and then you have Miami. It really could not have gotten worse the entire evening. After a Week 1 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars, how would you sum up this team's season thus far, Dave Naylor? You lose Tua to this concussion. This is a disaster.
Well, you think about Miami's had 2 home games, and they trailed after 3 quarters a week ago, and they trailed for all 4 quarters tonight. So 7 out of 8 quarters at home to begin the season, they are trailing. You look at their big weapons, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, supposed to be unstoppable. After 3 quarters tonight, they combined for 65 yards. Now, the Bills' defense did a great job, but Tua Tagovailoa missed a lot of throws as well. I mean, there was one where Tyreek Hill didn't have anyone within 10 yards of him, and he's running it out, and the ball gets thrown out of bounds, and he can't stay in bounds to make the catch. So you factor all of that in, and then the Tua injury, and you've got Skylar Thompson coming in behind him with what Tua has his injury history. It's not just like any quarterback getting a concussion. There's some real serious concern. And look, I think also from a psychological standpoint, Jay, so much of the offseason in Miami is talking about, can you beat the Bills? Can you beat the Bills? They own the AFC East. I mean, they had a 3-game lead with 5 to play last year and let it slip away, including on the final night of the regular season on this field right here. Buffalo came in, beat Miami, and the Dolphins had to go to Kansas City and play in a freezer and ended up being a wild card elimination game. That is so much of the focus. You've got to get over the Buffalo Bills. And they come in the second game of the season and get absolutely smoked on a night when Josh Allen didn't have to be great. Very, very tough night for the Miami Dolphins.
And now the Bills look like they're in the driver's seat for the division. Dave Naylor, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for joining us on the show. You know, the next 4 games for the Buffalo Bills, 3 of them are primetime affairs. They'll host the Jags Monday night in Week 3 before playing the next 3 on the road. They'll travel to Baltimore Sunday night for Week 4. They'll travel to Houston for week number 5. That'll be a Sunday afternoon affair. And then they'll face their AFC East rival Jets at the Meadowlands Week 6 on Monday Night Football.